I was born in Portsmouth, Virginia in 1947, and during that period, it was a segregated environment. My parents were educators, so I came from a family of educators. My aunt was the first black woman doctor in the town. My uncle was an attorney there. My dad started out as a teacher in the town, became a principal, and then an assistant superintendent.
And in terms of your downtown libraries?
Yeah, so the
time?
libraries were segregated. There was an African American library. I was aware that there was another library in town, but it was segregated. And I went to the library, the main library in town when I was in high school. The aspiration of African Americans in that town was the importance of education to move to something else. So the people I knew well were all aspiring to go to college, were all aspiring to do something after college. Never forgetting that you can make a difference in your community. So I really went through a segregated school system, went on to Hampton Institute, that's now known as Hampton University.
What were some of the things that you did at Hampton as a student?
So Hampton had exchange programs throughout other states, for example, and that's how I ended up at Cornell on an exchange program. And Hampton had international exchange programs. I graduated with honors, but in early childhood education. During my senior year of college, the dilemma was, did I want to go on for a doctorate in education, or did I want to work more in policy? And I decided I wanted to work more in policy. So I shifted my senior year of college and decided I wanted to go to law school and applied to law school. The University of Connecticut offered me a scholarship, and I ended up coming to Connecticut. I didn't realize they didn't have other women of color who were lawyers in Connecticut at the time, but I came to Connecticut because they recruited.
What's it like being at the University of Connecticut when you're an African-American woman from Virginia?
The first class of students of color were really my class. This was in 1969. There were 12 women in my class, but I was the only woman of color.
For a student of color in the UConn Law School, were there any faculty members who took time to mentor you during your time there?
That was a little more difficult to talk about mentoring. There really wasn't that kind of mentoring. But I did meet a wonderful guy when I was in law school that I ended up marrying. His name was Alan Green, and he started law school a little after me. After being married and I graduated from law school, I had my first daughter and then became a member of the Connecticut Bar in 1975.
Do you remember when you took the bar exam and found out you passed the bar exam, what it was like?
We were sworn in down in New Haven. It was a sea of people. My husband was there. A couple of really good friends came up, including Bill Brown. If you recall, Bill Brown was at the Urban League. He was. I should have mentioned him. He was a great mentor to me too. He was one of the executive directors of the Urban League back in the day.
Would you talk to us a little bit about when you first became an attorney, and then some of the significant work that you did as an attorney?
I initially started out heading up what was called the state arm of the Urban Leagues of Connecticut, that was located in a law firm, Sosnoff, Cooper and Whitney, in New Haven. And the state arm of the Urban Leagues was to look at government relations and to start, it kind of got me on my way of legislative work and lobbying. A lot of the work that I did in working for small law firms, I worked with a law firm in Bloomfield that I did pretty much family law. And then I moved to more of public interest work. So in New Haven, I worked at New Haven Legal Services and then at Legal Aid in Hartford. So during that period, a lot of the work that I did was in family law and in child custody. I eventually moved away from that kind of work because it became tough for me in my heart. And I eventually moved from the work of neighborhood legal services and legal aid to education.
Now, you have a huge track record in terms of philanthropic endeavors.
During that period, I also was one of the founders of QUELF. That is a Connecticut Women's Legal and Education Fund that really was a springboard to these kinds of issues. But also, There have been things that I've been involved in the community, such as the Hartford Public Library, that I think is really because of that education work. At Eastern, I thought the equity work was important to how we mentor students, by how we spend time with students, by how we confront discrimination in quiet ways. I've served on a number of boards. I was on the Bloomfield Board of Education for a few years. I chaired a charter school in Hartford for a couple of years. I served on the advisory committee of Teachers College at Columbia University, where I got my doctorate. There's always been a sense to me, family first, community, and career has been kind of a hodgepodge of a number of things. Law, equity, diversity, looking at hiring practices, just a number of things, education.
And let me drift back to Columbia University and working on a doctorate after having
After age 50.
having a very successful career.
I had always had this dream. My work isn't finished. I wanted a doctorate.
You graduate from Columbia and then you graduate from UConn Law. What did your family in Virginia think of all the work that you had done?
I came from a family of high expectations. So it was not, and that was a part of the norm. It was not considered expectations. That's a newer word used. It's a part of the norm that people in my family and people in my community always aspired to do more.
Could we go back to Constance Baker Motley for a moment?
Constance Baker Motley was the first appointed federal judge. One of my early, not mentors, but really role models, was her work on Brown versus Board of Education, and that would be 1954. Her struggles as an African American woman lawyer meant that she had to keep opening doors. She had to keep proving herself in a number of ways. I met her back in the early 2000s. She is definitely my role model.
Now, what would you tell young women today about the legal profession and the work that you've done over the years?
I talk to a number of young women now, women of color. I still mentor some of the women of color that go into a number of different areas. The law, meaning practice of law in a law firm, being one of them. But the critical thinking, the ability to open doors because you are a lawyer, helps that process. But always thinking about it, the law, as you would any other profession, what is the impact? What do you feel you're going to add by going into that profession?
If you had to sum up yourself in 2 minutes.
I would hope that my primary thing that I've done well on is that I was a great wife, a great mother, a great friend, and that I made even a small difference in my community and in the life of someone else.